All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're rigorously dissecting a really fascinating piece of research, analyzing the statistical impact of supply chain management on aircraft maintenance turnaround time within the MRO industry. Look, in aviation management, having an aircraft just sitting on the ground is basically burning money. It's an incredibly expensive proposition. And what this paper does so brilliantly is it moves us way beyond those anecdotal, everyday operational complaints and gives us hard empirical evidence. We're actually going to mathematically isolate the exact impact of supply chain management, or SCM, on aircraft turnaround time. It's going to be a deep dive, so let's get into it.
Here's our syllabus for today. We'll move systematically from the theoretical framework right through a strict methodological deconstruction. We'll isolate the statistical findings, apply a critical, real-world lens to those numbers, explore the strategic implications for the hangar floor, and finally look toward the future. We're not just summarizing here, we are going to critically analyze the whole shebang.
Okay, Section 1, Framework and Problem Statement. Let's set the stage.
So, let's talk about the operational reality we're dealing with. Global aviation profitability rests almost entirely on keeping these highly capital-intensive assets, the aircraft, in the air. The maintenance, repair, and overhaul sector, or MRO, is the absolute critical enabler of this readiness. And how do we measure that efficiency? Universally, it's turnaround time, or TAT. Now think about this. A modern commercial aircraft is a massive marvel of engineering, with over 1 million individual components. Historically, the industry kind of viewed turnaround time efficiency mostly through the lens of labor productivity, or just hangar capacity. But in our post-pandemic landscape, which is full of structural fragility and supply chain shockwaves, that whole paradigm has shifted. Supply chain management has officially replaced pure labor productivity as the dominant variable dictating whether an aircraft is ready to fly.
But here's where it gets interesting, because we need to identify what we don't know. Despite all the existing literature out there on basic inventory optimization, the authors found a massive research gap. There is an absolute absence of a statistically proven model that can definitively predict how specific supply chain improvements actually alter aircraft release schedules. Essentially, we need the hard math. We need to know the exact mathematical correlation between upgrading your supply chain and actually reducing that turnaround time.
All right, moving on to Section 2, Methodology and Data Profile. Operationally speaking, any model we use has to account for what is actually moving through the supply chain. So, our theoretical framework categorizes inventory into 5 very distinct types: consumable, expendable, repairable, roadable, and commercial. And, each of these has a totally unique demand profile and highly specific procurement challenges, especially when you're dealing with heavily regulated safety-critical components. To really capture that complexity, the study utilizes a super rigorous 5-stage methodology. It flows logically from problem formulation right into a comprehensive literature review and then into the design of a mixed-scale survey. But the absolute core of their approach, the real heavy lifting, happens in Step 5. They use IBM SPS to run a multiple stepwise regression analysis, and they chose this specific statistical technique to successfully isolate and weigh the exact impact of independent supply chain variables on our dependent variable, which of course is turnaround time.
Now, in survey-based research, your output is literally only as good as your input. Out of 1,500 distributed surveys, the authors managed to secure 1,299 valid responses, mostly coming from the Asian MRO region. But here's the kicker. An overwhelming 80% of those respondents have between 16 and 30 years of direct industry experience. Think about that. This isn't just theoretical guesswork from a bunch of novices. This data is the aggregated, hard-earned operational wisdom of seasoned MRO leaders.
Let's dig into the math. Section 3, Statistical Findings and Models.
0.62294. In the realm of operational and social sciences, this number is profound. This is the model's R-squared value. What this tells us is that an extraordinary 62.29% of the observed variability in turnaround time reduction is directly explained by the study's independent supply chain variables. Put simply, more than 3/5 of your ability to speed up an aircraft's release from the hangar is dictated entirely by how well you manage your supply chain. That is huge. And this leads us to the study's absolute crowning achievement, the regression equation itself. This equation mathematically dictates the relationship between innovative tools and actual efficiency. The really crucial figure here is the B-value coefficient, which is 0.873. Statistically speaking, for every single unit increase in the implementation of innovative supply chain tools, which is our X1 variable, turnaround time, our Y variable, is reduced by precisely 0.873 units. It unequivocally proves that technological and procedural SCM upgrades aren't just administrative overhead. No, they yield direct, measurable, almost one-to-one operational dividends.
All right, Section 4, Critical Analysis and Discussion. Time to put on our master's level critical thinking caps.
Because, let's be real, no study is perfect and we have to critically acknowledge the limitations here. First off, there's a strong geographic bias. The data heavily reflects the Asian MRO region. Second, while stepwise regression is incredibly powerful, it's basically a mathematically greedy algorithm. It inherently prioritizes statistical criteria over theoretical importance when picking variables. Third, any self-reported survey is going to carry some inherent bias. But honestly, the most significant critique lies in its operational assumptions. Regression models fundamentally assume linear relationships.
And that brings us to a major friction point. In theory, the model promises a smooth, beautifully linear reduction of turnaround time just by adding new SCM tools. But let's look at the post-pandemic reality. Real-world MRO operations are currently dealing with highly stochastic, meaning random and completely unpredictable bottlenecks. Original equipment manufacturers are severely constrained, and the supplier pool is tiny. In this chaotic environment, a shiny new software tool cannot linearly solve a physical shortage of titanium fan blades. It just can't. So, what does this mean on the ground? Section 5, Strategic and Practical Implications. MRO decision-makers have to navigate some brutal practical trade-offs to control turnaround time. When we look at inventory strategies, just-in-time models keep capital costs super low, sure, but they carry massive stockout risks, which makes your turnaround time highly variable. Traditional safety stocking, it ensures consistency, but it ties up astronomical amounts of capital. The strategic sweet spot the industry is actually moving towards, and this is driven by those innovative tools proven in our regression model, is predictive pooling. By sharing risk and using data to actively forecast failures, MROs can achieve minimal risk, optimal cost, and the absolute highest level of TAT consistency. True strategic optimization, though, requires balancing a triad of factors. On the tech side, it means migrating to managed serverless stacks like Azure, using Python for predictive analytics, and rolling out RFID and 3D printing. For processes, it demands a shift from rigid, deterministic planning to flexible, stochastic optimization. But maybe the most fascinating part of all this is the human factor. The research explicitly notes that turnaround time efficiency significantly moderates employee performance. Think about it. When your supply chain works perfectly, your mechanics aren't just standing around waiting for parts. Frustration drops, job satisfaction rises, and the overall productivity of the hangar experiences this incredible compounding positive effect. Finally, Section 6, Conclusions and Future Research. Let's wrap this up. Before we finalize our key takeaways, I want you to consider a fundamental friction point. Can deterministic statistical models, like the linear regression we've been breaking down today, truly predict operational efficiency in a fundamentally chaotic, stochastic, post-pandemic global supply chain? The tension there between neat theoretical mathematics and messy physical reality is immense. But ultimately, even with all those real-world complexities, the empirical data in this paper is undeniable. It conclusively proves that modernizing your supply chain management is no longer just a nice-to-have administrative upgrade. It is the primary mathematical driver of MRO profitability, and it's the absolute key to minimizing aircraft turnaround times.
So, where do we go from here? Future academic and operational research absolutely has to expand this framework. We need to test these statistical truths beyond just the Asian region to ensure they hold up globally. We also need to investigate how the quality of a specific repair impacts future spare part demand, and we must actively integrate advanced machine learning architectures for predictive fleet ordering. The data has clearly shown us the anatomy of efficiency today, but I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. As we start handing over predictive fleet ordering to these complex, black box machine learning architectures, will we actually finally eliminate supply chain fragility once and for all, or are we just mathematically optimizing our own blind spots? Thanks so much for joining this explainer. Keep asking the hard questions.